Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the News Today edition of 29th of June, wherein we pick up all important news of the day and explain it to you simply from examination perspective. So let's look at the important topics which we will cover today. First is Digital India program has completed 11 years of its initiation. Then, a devastating cloudburst in Arunachal Pradesh has triggered massive landslides and flash floods. Then, global economy will face a critical trilemma of El Nino, stagflation, and shrinkflation. Then, Bank of International Settlements has talked about the idea that artificial intelligence spending may not be sustainable. And then we'll discuss about Prime Minister's visit to Seychelles along with certain quick updates of the day. The very first news here is Digital India program of the government has completed 11 years of its initiation, and we will basically understand here what exactly development has happened around the ideas of digitalization which has happened in Indian economy, a very important topic. Again, it pertains all of to major parts of syllabus of GS paper number 2 and paper number 3, right? E-governance, all such things are there. And this is a very important segment wherein every area of the economy is again getting digitalized, starting from healthcare, economy, then again society, everywhere there is an impact of digitalization. So we'll see over here. So this was launched in 2015 July, and it has laid the foundation of India's digital economy and digital public infrastructure. And this is where it has seen that how much it has contributed to India's GDP. Again, it has contributed nearly 12 to 14% of India's GDP. And of course, we have seen that how the unified payment interface, UPI, nowadays anyone, even if you're doing a transaction, let's say 10 rupees, we're using an UPI app. That shows the amount of digital penetration which has happened in the economy of India. So now let's look at the 9 pillars of digitalization of India and their impact. Number one, we have talked about highways, national highways, but again, in a similar manner, we have broadband highways. So what has been there? The government has led a program that it would lay down that every village panchayat, approximately 2.5 lakh gram panchayats connected under the BharatNet 1 and BharatNet 2 project by January 26. Then if we are going for digitalization, it also means everyone should have access to digital tools. So yes, it has made universal access to mobile connectivity. Broadband internet subscriber base has increased to 106.58 crores until March 2026. Then we have seen that how public internet access has increased more than 6.5 lakh common service centers. What are those? Because understand, in every household, specifically in rural areas, does not have computers, right? But there is an idea of digitalization, so how they can get a benefit of those digital tools. So there are common service centers across rural areas, which is going to help them to get accustomed or maybe to use the digital services which are being provided to by the government, right? Then again, we know e-governance. Again, the use of ICT in the ideas of governance of the country, it has also led to a lot of benefits in terms of DigiLocker, again a single storage of all your important certificates and documents. We have national single sign on ecosystem. Then e-Kranti, again we have seen that how much governance is now shifted to e-governance, right? For example, we have e-hospitals, e-Sanjeevani, e-courts, which were not there earlier. And of course, this has led to improvement in efficiency of these services. At the very same time, it has made getting used, maybe some people who are not able to come down to get those services, getting them through the ideas of e-governance. Then we have information of for all. Of course, we know MyGov platform, which is again a tool where again all important communications, all important government development schemes are being communicated over here, right? Then we have electronics manufacturing, because of course if we are going for digitalization, of course that needs digital tools, and this is where we are integrating the idea of electronics manufacturing in India. Again, we have done a lot of steps regarding that, right? So electronics production has increased from about 1.9 lakh crores to about 12 lakh crores. Again, a very huge development. Then we have seen that how it has also created a lot of jobs in terms of IT and ITES, right? And then early harvest program, we have public Wi-Fi spots, we have e-books, SMS-based weather alerts, all such things. All are examples of or the 9 pillars of digital India and their impact. Very important. They can ask question. Please assess the 11 years or maybe the how exactly do you see digitalization or Digital India campaign has led to development across different sectors of the country. Again, you can use these kind of data in your respective answers. Then we'll see that how it has helped India. Number one, it has strengthened, of course, digital governance. Then it has, of course, led to digitalization. Earlier, maybe internet was a luxury thing, but now everyone has access to internet, right? Most of us have access to internet. Again, it has become very affordable in nature. Then we have it has led to accelerated innovation, because we have seen that how India's capabilities across AI, cloud computing, and cyber security has improved. And then India has joined global leadership. 24 countries have partnered with India through memorandum of understandings to adopt India's stack and DPI solutions. Again, a very important significant development in this particular area. Now, what kind of challenges are persisting along with the, if we are discussing 11 years of Digital India mission, then what kind of challenges still we are facing as a country? Number one, we have escalating cybersecurity. We have seen that how much cyber threats, cyber security issues are reported in our country, and with digitalization, it has also created an idea of what cyber security, wherein we have seen that the cyber attacks on Indian government entities has surged by 138% from 19 to 2023. Then we have seen that there are maybe a lack of coordination between different institutions around the ideas of digitalization, and that is something still institutions are working in serious. We need an integrated approach, right? And that's an area where again overlapping mandates, fragmented responsibilities, uneven capabilities are there. And then local innovation is not as much or at par with how it should have ideally happened. We are spending less on data infrastructure, R&D capacity, gaps in talent are there. So all of these are the challenges which are still persisting. Again, whenever a question is being asked to assess anything, we need to give two kind of pictures. One is positives and some kind of challenges that makes an answer complete. So these kind of data facts could be used to substantiate or validate the points in a respective mains upcoming examination, right? The next topic here is a devastating cloudburst has happened in Arunachal Pradesh, which has triggered massive landslides and flash floods. So, होते क्या है? First of all, what are basically cloudbursts? Imagine, let's say, if there's a tap of water and the tap of water is filling a bucket. So, of course, the flow of water is very much in a let's say a constant pace, and then the bucket is slowly, let's say, getting filled. Imagine if I drop that entire bucket of water suddenly to a smaller area. What would happen? Of course, the area could not absorb excess amount of water in a short span of time. And then, of course, it is going to lead to what? Flooding in that particular area. So cloudbursts are basically sudden downpour of maybe a huge amount of rainfall in a short span of time, which is again leading to the idea of flash floods and landslides. Cloudburst is a thing happening, and it leads to what? Flash floods and landslides. So we'll discuss. So recently there has been a cloudburst in the Arunachal Pradesh. Of course, cloudbursts are frequently seen in the Himalayan region, right? We'll discuss the reasons around that as well. It has led to massive, let's say, flash floods, then massive landslides and damage to roads, bridges, of course, there. And we have seen similar nature of cloudburst happening in India in Kedarnath 2013 and in Himachal Pradesh in 2020, right? So now let's understand what exactly are cloudbursts. So cloudbursts, as I discussed, are extreme amount of precipitation, that is rainfall, for a short period of time. Uske liye bhi hai, what is IMD's criteria for that? That if rainfall is about 100 millimeters above per hour in an area roughly less than 100 square kilometer area, that is again defining of cloudbursts has happened as per Indian Meteorological Department, right? Of course, it is accompanied by hail, thunderstorms capable of creating flood corridors or conditions. Occurrence, it is highly localized. It happens at a very localized area in specific areas. And let's say connective precipitation often triggered by orographic lifting. We'll see that through an image, right? So basically what happens in orographic lifting, if let's say wind is flowing and it is crossing a sudden let's say mountain region, then again wind is of course moving upwards, it cools down, and again we will see the how much the let's say moisture holding capacity of air is getting reduced, and it leads to sudden downpour, and that is happening across specifically in the Himachal belt of the country. So now what kind of impact it has? Of course, once suddenly huge amount of rainfall will fall over a small area, then of course the absorption capacity is very less at a, agar मान लो कि sponge है, if sponge में if I'm constantly pouring water, then of course sponge will absorb water. But if suddenly I pour a bucket of water in a small sponge, it cannot absorb, and that will lead to what? Maybe the water would spread out, and it will lead to what? Flash floods. It will lead to what? Landslides, and that is how it is impacting the area where again cloud bursts are happening. We have seen, let's say, flash floods, inundation of low-lying areas, landslides. And basically, what are flash floods? Flash floods are characterized by a very fast rise and recession. तुरंत आती है और चले भी जाती है. Flow of small volume and high discharge of water. That's an idea. If you look at this particular image, you will see that how exactly is happening. If winds are flowing, of course, if the moisture-laden wind is moving towards the mountains, of course, with the slope over it, of course, it is going to rise up, and then once rising up, the air will cool down, and if clouds are going to get developed, and then what will happen? There is a violent upward movement of, let's say, wind, and then condensation is happening, which is leading to what? A sudden movement is leading to less condensation over there, and then the lack of upward air prevents dissipation of moisture, and the holding capacity is beyond, and then what happens? The whole of stored water falls at one point of time, and then the steep slope of these causes what? Flash floods. So these are the specific reasons and how orographic lifting is leading to the idea of cloud burst. Now, if you look at what is a way forward for this, how we can mitigate, because as a very important segment of your paper number 3, disaster management, you're going to see questions around those disasters which happened frequently in our country recently, right? So again, you need to have a specific way forward at how we can mitigate it. And that is where you are going to end your answers through an optimistic way forward, or a way forward which is going to solve the problem which we are facing. Here we have cloudburst disaster risk reduction strategy under National Disaster Management Plan. क्या करना है हमें? We need to understand the risk, that where exactly landslides are happening. We need to make a zonation, that is landslide hazard zonation, using different kinds of spatial data, that is aerial photographs, satellite imagery, many such things, employing what? Technological improvements in remote sensing. Then we need to have inter-agency coordination, because understand that there are multiple agencies working towards disaster mitigation. There has to be coordination between these agencies. Electricity department should be connected to, let's say, water department to, let's say, the department of, let's say, any other thing in the respective area, and that is where integration is going to help solve the problem in a very efficient manner. So again, among central government, state governments, and let's say, which is going to make the response quick, clear, effective, right? Then we need to have structural measures, that how exactly physically we are going to mitigate the impact of these cloudbursts, right? By having what? Integrated approach towards slope stabilization, combining bioengineering, plants and trees, and mechanical structures, which is going to stop the sudden flow of water. And then we need to have capacity development. We need to have let's say, training, development programs given to state disaster response force, community, and volunteers. And that is how we are going to come up with a way forward to solve the issue, or maybe to mitigate or to lessen the impact of cloudburst happening in the country. Very important news for paper number 3, disaster management. Then was the next news, that is global economy is of course facing a critical trilemma, that is stagflation, El Nino, and shrinkflation. So let's discuss these three concepts first, and then we'll see how these three things are interrelated, interlinked, which is again leading to a slowdown of Indian economy, which has been projected. A very important news for your upcoming mains examination of GS paper number 3. If you look at here, what is stagflation? Again, you must have read in economics. Stagflation kya hoti? Whenever we have a slowdown in the economy is not working at a pace it should be, then along with this we find high inflation. Inflation is good if economy is growing. अगर economy grow कर रहा है, of course there will be price rise of goods and services. That is good for the economy, healthy for the economy, right? But if the slowdown in economy is there and it is again accompanied by high inflation rate, plus we have less jobs in the economy, this situation is known as stagflation. So it's a rare situation where what is happening, basically economic slowdown followed by prices are going to rise and job opportunities remain weak. आपके पास जॉब नहीं है, प्राइस राइज हो गया है, इकोनॉमी में स्लो डाउन है, how it is going to impact the economy, imagine. And that is what is happening, which has been projected, right? So normally inflation happens when economy is booming, but in stagflation the economy is weak and inflation is high at the same time, which is not good for any economy. Example, अब मान लो how why it is happening, because we have seen a disturbance happening in the West Asia region, which has led to the rise of prices of what, LPG and cooking oils, right? And then it has led to what, businesses face higher cost, they are producing less and hiring fewer workers due to the impact of this West Asia crisis, and consumers are paying more while आपका salary उतना ही है, but the prices of petrol, LPG, everything has increased, and that has been the idea of what, stagflation. So it is how it is impacting the economy, lower purchasing power and unemployment increase simultaneously. It is called as stagflation. Then we have something called as shrinkflation. What is shrinkflation? A very a tool used by producers wherein they don't want to increase the price of product, but they are going to shrink down the amount of goods or services they are providing at the same price. Example, क्या होता है? We are going to not see price rise, but the quantity of the thing or the product is going to get reduced. Example, कि earlier let's say a biscuit packet में 100 grams of biscuit you are getting for 20 rupees, but now the price will remain the same, but the quantity of biscuit will be reduced, let's say 85 grams. That is called as what? Shrinkflation. Basically it's happening what? The quantity of the product is reduced while keeping the price same, right? So इससे क्या होता है फायदा? The price appears unchanged but consumers receive less. Why do companies do this? Because of course if prices are going to get increased, we will see the purchasing power of course is getting reduced, and maybe many people cut down spending on certain goods and services, and of course it is going to impact those producers of those goods and services. Sir, companies क्या करती हैं? प्राइस को सेम रख रही हैं, क्वांटिटी को कम कर देती है, राइट? सो अगेन हियर टू अवॉइड कस्टमर रेजिस्टेंस टू डायरेक्ट प्राइस हाइक्स and to compensate for rising production costs. Impact, technically किसको नुकसान हो रहा है? Because the poor and the informal workers are suffering the most, because they are living the life of hand to mouth, right? And if the quantity of products, if they are receiving is getting reduced, it is impacting them most. That is the vulnerable sections of society. Then we have been seeing all over the news ideas of El Nino, which is again the climate change shock which we are experiencing this year. What is El Nino? Again, you must have read multiple times, wherein climate change or climate phenomena wherein the warm ocean water develops in the eastern equatorial Pacific Ocean, disrupting the global weather patterns. Of course, we have read that. Impact on India, very important to see. Weak or delayed monsoon, which we are seeing this year, right? Then secondly, lower, agar monsoon kam hoga, we're going to have less agricultural production, because agriculture in India is majorly monsoon dependent. Then we are having heat waves, how it is going to impact the laborers, how it is going to take a toll on, let's say, the medical expenditure. Then we are facing water shortages. So these are the impact of El Nino on India. So we are going to see less crop production. So of course, food will become scarce, food prices will increase, and farmers' income will fall. So again, El Nino is again worsening the ideas of inflation, which is already happening in the economy due to the region of slowdown. Just to draw a complete analysis, El Nino leading to what? Let's say poor monsoons or heat waves, it leads to what? Lower agricultural output, which leads to what? Higher food prices. Then if higher food price means inflation happening in the economy, if inflation is followed by maybe slow growth and fewer jobs, it is going to lead to what? Stagflation. And then what are companies going to do? They are not going to increase the price of certain goods and services, but they are going to shrink down the amount or the quantity of goods, leading to what? Shrinkflation, and the consumers, especially the poor lose their purchasing power. And that's the impact of these three trilemma which Indian economy is facing as of now. So what is the way forward? How we can solve this problem, right? So again, that needs an integrated approach by the government, wherein we need to function and we need to see economy hand in hand with the idea of climate change. So again, we need to strengthen the food security through climate resilient agriculture, which we are of course doing, but still more need to be done. Then we need to expand social protection for vulnerable households, because heat waves are happening. You must have seen a lot of times in Delhi, in many of the let's say metro cities, we have, let's say, cold areas where again there's gig workers who come and, let's say, rest. They can let's say get a good cool atmosphere over there. Then we have controlling inflation while supporting economic growth. This is where RBI is constantly working to balance the idea of growth versus inflation. Then we are going to improve irrigation, because water shortages are happening. We need to be, as agriculture is dependent majorly on water and monsoon, we need to have good irrigation facilities. We need to have water management. We need to have disaster preparedness. And then we need to promote what? Climate adaptation, because climate change is happening. That's a reality. Now we need to adapt to it. So we need to focus more on climate adaptation to reduce the impact of El Nino and other extreme weather events. Similar nature of heat waves you must have seen in the European region, all over in the news. That's how we need to see, and we need to understand that how climate change is actually happening. We have been talking about it, but now we are seeing in real, right? And that is something a very alarming concern. We all need to come together to fight climate change. A small effort by you on a day-to-day basis is going to solve the problem, and that's where the change is going to begin. A very important topic for an examination. Next topic here is all over the news, artificial intelligence. You know, then there is a maybe a statement or maybe a report has come down by Bank of International Settlements. They have talked about that the spending, जितने पैसे लोग खर्च कर रहे हैं, lot of big companies are spending a lot of money on AI tools, data centers, and this is where this bank has again given a report where it talks about how much sustainable we need to be with respect to spending which we are doing on the new technology of artificial intelligence. मान लो कि आपने पैसे खर्च तो कर दिए, but the amount of returns you can expect out of those spending is not up to it, then there will be a major challenge. And that is what this report has highlighted about it. If you look at here, how they are linked to, let's say, macroeconomic impact. Let's say we are spending, or companies are spending more on artificial intelligence, right? So there is an idea of supply chain spillovers. मान लो, let's say you must have seen that, say, US, China, they are all are maybe giants, or specifically US is a giant in terms of IT services, IT companies. So again, AI requires huge quantity of what? Semiconductors, chips, servers, and data centers. You all know this. Now, as US companies invest heavily on this artificial intelligence, they need what? More chips, servers, data centers. And for their AI infrastructure, they are dependent heavily, and US companies are investing on countries like Taiwan, South Korea, which are benefiting by exporting chips and electronic companies. अब ये countries, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, are benefiting why? Because they're exporting those chips to US companies, which are again using them for AI infrastructure. Example, if AI investment by companies such as Microsoft, Google, and Meta increase demand for chips made by companies like TSMC, of course, जितने बड़ी कंपनी है, if Microsoft, Google, Meta, they are using AI infrastructure, they need to improve it, they will buy certain chips from these countries. What if AI investments slow down? Now, no longer these US companies are going to ask for exporting of chips and electronics computers like from these countries. तो यहाँ पर क्या होगा? These countries are going to face what? Economic slowdown, right? So these exporting countries could also face economic slowdown, and that is where the supply chain spillovers concept is being discussed. Then the second macroeconomic instability is going to be in the ideas of inflation. So as understand कि AI uses data centers. Data centers require a huge amount of electricity, right? And of course, if an amount of electricity demand in that particular region is of course going to increase, with increased electricity demand, the price is of course going to increase. So higher energy cost increases what? The production cost across industries, leading to what? Inflation, right? Example, if one factory suddenly starts consuming most of the city's electricity, the electricity of course becomes costlier for everyone else, and that's how you're going to see the ideas of inflationary pressure within developments around artificial intelligence. Then we have private credit risk. अब बड़ी companies पैसे कहाँ से ला रही हैं? How they are getting money? They are taking loans from banks, right? So example, many AI companies are financing their expansion through what? Loans and private credit. Now this Bank of International Settlement has warned that too much money is being concentrated in a handful large technological firms. बहुत सारे पैसे कुछ handful firms which are working towards artificial intelligence are concentrated. If that, imagine a situation, if those companies fail, if those expectations which we have with AI is not going to be coming out, then what would happen to the huge amount of investment and the, let's say, the credit which these companies have taken? Of course, it is going to have an impact over what? The credit risks. That is been discussed. If, let's say, the 5 largest AI hyperscalers, right, they are expected to spend over 1 trillion on AI infrastructure during 25-26. If AI profits disappoint, then what would happen? Banks and investors that finance these projects could face heavy losses, again impacting the economy. Then the second area is, of course, how it is going to impact labor productivity. As per this bank, it has talked about, of course, we have seen the coming up of AI. It has led to, let's say, it has improved the productivity of workforce. We have seen that again, the amount of time has, of course, reduced by, example, studies बोलती है कि we can, the workers are saving approximately 20 to 50% of their working time by the use of artificial intelligence. Examples क्या है? We need not to write reports. We need to not to code. Most of the softwares, customer support, medical diagnosis, data analysis, all is being done by AI. Of course, it has led to improvement in the productivity of employees. What's the downside? Now, the demand side bottleneck problem. Number one, it has talked about the long-term concern. Workers earn wages, right? If I earn wage, workers spend money on goods and services, and businesses earn profit. That's how economy is working. If I am spending, that is again creating demand for a particular good or service in the economy, and that's how companies are producing more. Then how is AI changing this entire cycle? If companies automate jobs, ठीक है, automation आ गया. Again, the major concern of AI commonly which we see is the job losses. Jobs ही नहीं है. Of course, I do not have any job. My spending capacity in the economy is reduced. Now I do not have money. I cannot go and buy certain goods and services. Even if an AI company is investing a huge amount of money by taking credit, but no one is able to buy that service. Why? Because there is no job, and with no job, there is no money in the hands of people. And that is the situation we're discussing over here. That fewer workers receive wages, more profits go to buying even more AI. Consumer spending falls because fewer people have income. So eventually what happens? Companies becomes highly productive, but fewer people can afford to buy their products. This weakens overall economic demand in the economy. That's the idea on impact of huge investments we are doing on AI with respect to labor productivity and labor market. Then we have cyber security threats. We have seen already with an idea of digitalization, we are facing the problem of cybersecurity. But with the coming up of AI, we have seen that how advanced AI can help hackers. For example, the frontier AI models can generate malware, they automate phishing emails, they discover software vulnerabilities faster, they launch cyber attacks at a larger scale, right? And this is increasing risk for what? Banks, financial markets, payment systems, digital infrastructure. So now it is again telling us how it is going to create an impact on the financial systems of the country. So these are the 3 major areas around which this bank has talked about. Unsustainable investment on AI is happening, and we need to have a look on the amount of money which we are spending on AI, because these are the kind of challenges which we might come to face. Then why AI spending may not be sustainable? Kyun sustainable nahi hai as for this particular bank? It has talked about. The bank argues that today's AI investment resembles previous technology booms. How? If AI profits are lower than expected, what will happen? The demand is of course going to slow down and companies are going to overspend. Then what will happen? The firms may cut their investments, credit markets may suffer losses, which we have seen, stock markets may decline, and economic growth could weaken. This is where we need to have a sustainable way in which we are, let's say, investing in this particular artificial intelligence technology is going to be making the process more sustainable in nature. That's where this report has talked about. Now let's get to know this bank for international settlements. Very important, again important for your prelims based questions. So this bank was established in 1930 at the Hague Conference. Its membership includes, it is owned by 63 central banks covering 95% of global GDP. Mission is of course to support the, let's say, central banks of country in terms of their monetary and financial stability through international cooperation, and to act as bank for central banks. Headquarters is in Basel, Switzerland. Very important fact for your prelims examination. The next news here is our Honorable Prime Minister was on a 3-day visit to Seychelles Island. So that makes this country very important for us. We will see the importance of Seychelles for India, a very important topic for your GS paper number 2, international relations. We're going to see what has happened and how developments have happened. Before that, we need to understand where exactly Seychelles is located. If you look at the map of, this is Africa, this is the Indian Ocean. So again, this is where Seychelles Island lie. So it is in the western Indian Ocean with a Somali Sea region. So very important strategic location it has, because majority of sea, let's say, links or sea routes of international trade happens or passes through this particular island. So we are completing, let's say, 50 years of the diplomatic relations with Seychelles, because India established its diplomatic relations with Seychelles after it got independence in the year 1976. So basically, these are the important facts or geographic features. Just have a look on them. Then we'll see what were the major outcomes of this India-Seychelles engagement. Very important. Number one, India has donated approximately 500 million metric tons of rice to Seychelles. Again, a very important development. Then we are working, the Seychelles have joined the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Then we have made a pact on diplomatic training. Then we have been planning, or a MOU has been signed for UPI rollout in Seychelles Island. Then we are going to have an extradition treaty which is going to help them or help both countries to extradite, let's say, any, let's say, important criminals for transnational crimes. Then we have extended line of credit in terms of infrastructure development in Seychelles. And then we have the Prime Minister has got the highest civilian let's say, honor of Seychelles, that is the Guardian of Blue Horizon, that has been given to Mr. Prime Minister of India. Very important. These are the major outcomes of the 3-day summit of our Prime Minister. Now let's look at the importance of Seychelles for India. Very important strategically. If you look at in the map, of course, it is around the crossroads of major sea lines communications in the Western Indian Ocean, critical for India's trade, energy, and security. Then maritime security. Seychelles has approximately 1.3 million square kilometers of exclusive economic zone. ये क्या होती है? Maybe there are certain island countries which has access to roughly around, Seychelles have 1.3 million square kilometers exclusive economic zones, which again Seychelles can use it for maybe extracting, let's say, any kind of ocean energy, or let's say maybe let's say the food systems from that, and that is an idea of exclusive economic zone. So with this access of exclusive economic zone by Seychelles, India can have a maritime security with respect to this. For example, India-Seychelles joint vision for sustainability, economic growth, and security through enhanced linkages seeks to deepen collaboration in the maritime domain, awareness, intelligence sharing. Then Indian Ocean strategy, of course, India is having initiatives, for example, Sagar, Mahasagar. Again, it is going to be helping India in terms of the strategic location of what? Seychelles, which India has. Then in terms of other things, we are having countering, let's say, strategic competition. India is positioning itself as a dependable development partner of Seychelles to counter China's presence in the Indian Ocean. because China has been making its presence around Indian Ocean in many areas. Now, to counter that, we have a maybe a counter strategy, let's say, competition with respect to India's presence in the Seychelles Island. Then blue economy partnerships. We have been making a partnership around blue economy, which is of course going to make the process of development sustainable in nature. We have defense cooperation. We have a joint military exercise in the name of Lamity. Then we have Seychelles has always backed India, supported India in its quest for permanent positions in the United Nations Security Council. That has been one of the things. So that's how Seychelles is very important for us. And let's look at how this development is going to go forward from this particular let's say meet or a visit of Prime Minister over there. Now we're going to see certain quick updates for the day. Very first here is Prime Minister's Family Care Tracker. So basically, this is a pilot project which is going to be implemented in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. What is this particular thing? Basically, in this, we are going to track down the health, nutrition, education, everything of beneficiaries from the process of pregnancy of a woman till the child is attaining the age of adulthood, that is 18 years. We are going to track down child's health, nutrition, education, and that has been the idea from pregnancy until the age of 18. Very important development, right? It is going to provide every child with a unique child ID, or it is going to be linked to the Aadhaar IDs, right? Significance, it is going to help us to understand and to integrate data from multiple government platforms, generate risk alerts, and monitor key indicators, ensuring what benefits of government schemes reach automatically and in a timely manner to the beneficiaries. Very important development. Then next we have Perseverance rover. So recently we have seen a team of researchers have detected a complex and hardy found organic matter called as micromolecular carbon on Mars. Jezero cater using NASA's Perseverance rover, because this mission was launched by NASA to check the idea of life on Mars. So again, this development has happened. They have found out the rover has found out micromolecular carbon on Mars, which has been the idea telling that there could be a possibility of life on Mars. So researchers will use the rover's Sherlock. उस rover में एक कैमरा लगा और एक में भी एक instrument है which is called as Sherlock, that is scanning habitable environments with Raman and luminance of organics and chemicals instrument located on the end of rover's robotic arm. So काम क्या करती है? Because it is of course going to see the feasibility of life on Mars. It was launched in 2020, right? Target was Jezero crater in Mars. Now let's see how this development is going to come forward. Next we have greater adjutant stock. Again, our Prime Minister has hailed a fight against the superstition that saved rare stock in Assam. Picturize it, because species which are there in news becomes important for your prelims based questions around those species in the examination. So basics about them, it is basically found in India, in the Assam and Bihar, and in Cambodia. Its habitat includes wetlands nesting in tall trees with closed canopies and bamboo clumps around nesting trees. Right? They have a characteristics of principally carnivorous, feeding both on fish, frogs, snakes, and other reptiles, and they are nearly threatened as per the IUCN status. Very important thing. Then we have Diksha. Diksha portal, very important. Diksha stands for Digital Infrastructure for Knowledge Sharing. It was launched in 2017 and has emerged one nation, one digital platform for school education. Let's look at it. It has been launched by NCERT in collaboration with Central Institute for Education Technology and coming under Ministry of Education. It is an open source platform where again सारे teachers, students को एक open platform है where again you can get an access to a lot of maybe 3D, 2D videos to understand basics of certain subjects, certain topics, and that has been there. We have a lot of things. It's respect to making inclusive in nature. We have, let's say, text to speech, we have Indian sign languages, we have QR code, energized textbooks, all such things have been there. So very important platform with respect to education systems in our country. Then we have Swift telescope. So recently NASA is executing the Swift Boost mission to rescue its Neil Degrasse Swift Observatory from orbital decay caused by solar activity. And that is where this comes up in news. What is Swift telescope? It is launched in 2004. It is a multi-wavelength space observatory. It is designed to study gamma rays burst and transient cosmic explosions. It has a payload features. देख लीजिए क्या है basically significance. It is known for rapid autonomous repointing, serving as NASA's first responder volatile stellar phenomena and advancing astrophysics. Right. So very important segment. Just look at the news around that. Then we have draft amendment to medical devices rules. Again, this is in the draft phase. What changes have been proposed? Let's look at it. So, Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has published a draft notification under the medical devices rules. They are going to be classifying medical devices are classified into 4 risk categories based on them: class A, class B, class C, and class D, with class D comprising highest risk devices. The 2017 prescribed statutory timelines for processing applications for manufacturing licenses for each category, and that has been there. So what amendments they have proposed? It seeks to rationalize timelines for grant of manufacturing licenses for medical devices across different risk categories. Class B में low or moderate risk, of course. Example, B monitors proposed manufacturing license timeline reduced from 140 days to 105 days because now we need more such equipments, medical devices, so licensing requirement has been reduced. And then classes C and D, which of course of high risk, example, stents, implants, the proposed manufacturing license timeline reduced from 105 to 90 days because they are very critical for certain important, let's say, medical operations. Then we have QR code system. So recently what has happened, the center has mandated that all vaccines, all antimicrobials, all narcotics and anti-cancer drugs carry a QR code. QR code se kya hota hai? Just scan it and you can find out details about the product, and that is again going to help us understand and maybe the idea of duplicacy of drugs, the idea of maybe getting to know about that particular drug in an easy manner. It has going to do that. So tracking of mechanism will help implemented with the help of new categories of products by July 27 for vaccines, narcotics, anti-cancer drugs, and by July 28 for antimicrobials. Very important. QR code काम कैसे करता है? It is a 2-dimensional barcode that stores a large volume of data in a small physical space, right? Invented by, let's say, Masahiro Hara in 1994. It encodes data in a square grid of dark and light boxes and can be read from any orientation, left, right, top and bottom. कहीं से भी आप करो, scan हो जाता है QR code. They can be read even if the code is torn, stained, scratched, or partially missing. Applications, manufacturing, ticketing, logistics, marketing, we have seen them. Last, again, rural internal audit portal. Again, internal audit matlab for rural areas. There are a lot of time, services are there, schemes are there, but again, proper implementation challenges we are facing. For that, we have something called as rural internal audit portal. So it is developed by Union Rural Development Ministry coming under Office of Chief Controller of Accounts, Ministry of Rural Development, developed in collaboration, of course, with NIC, National Informatics Centers. It is a unified platform which have an end-to-end digital platform for compliance and risk-based internal audits. It is AI-enabled governance. It uses AI to enhance transparency, accountability. Again, use of it we have seen, and again, it's going to go for more digital transformation. Next, we have Sariska Tiger Reserve. So again, a national workshop was organized in the Alwar to mark 18 years of successful scientific tiger reintroduction in Sariska Tiger Reserve. Currently, it has 56 tigers and world's first successful scientific reintroduction. How it has happened, right? Wherein Tiger Reserve kahan par hai? Alwar district, Rajasthan, Aravali Hills. Very important. Rivers, let's say Ruprel River. Fauna कौन कौन से पाए जाते हैं? Tiger, of course, leopard, striped hyena, nilgai, sambar, all such things. For flora includes dhok, arjun, and tendu trees. Vegetation is northern tropical dry deciduous and thorn forest. And heritage, of course, it has been, let's say, having houses, prominent historical monuments like Kankwari Fort, Nilkant Temple, and Pandpul Hanuman Temple, very important ones. So very important, Tiger Reserve, important for examination. So with this, we come to the end of today's new discussion. All important questions which could be framed, the topics which you have discussed will pop up in your screen. It's very important that you solve those questions and post your answers in the comment section. That, of course, it is going to create a competitive spirit around all students who are watching this News Today edition of Vision IS. And lastly, Vision has come up with a digital current affairs platform, which is a one-stop solution for all of your current affairs need for this examination. Please go and explore the website. It is certainly going to help you a lot in terms of your current affairs preparation. Thank you so very much and good night.